Welcome to OSHA compliance training on chemical safety, hazard communication. Today, we're going to talk about the employee right to know. You have a right to know about the chemicals you're exposed to and how to protect yourself. You're going to need to know about the right to know law. You're also going to need to know about labeling and how to read the labels and understand them, safety data sheets to do a deeper dive, safe handling procedures when you're exposed to chemicals, and also about the different hazard types that you may be exposed to. The training won't be complete until you discuss all these with your supervisor. OSHA tells us that all chemicals in the workplace must have labels attached. You also need to have safety data sheets in the workplace available to all employees, and they must be trained. So first, let's talk about labels. Labels are your first line of defense. It's very important that you understand them. In the past, the labels look like this. These are the old-style OSHA and NFPA labels. There's been a different numbering system, different ways of looking at them. There's also the DOT labels that have been out there on bulk storage, like drums, totes, vehicles, and so forth. We're switching over and have switched over to pictograms. So what are these pictograms? Pictograms are part of the global harmonized system that's used worldwide. Pictograms give us a very simple, basic, quick view of what these chemicals are going to represent. It's important that you understand these pictograms. So let's take a look at each one individually. First, there's the one that represents flammable. Then the next one looks like flammable, but it's actually an oxidizer because it has an O in the middle. And then we have the exploding bomb to represent explosives. Next is the compressed gas. And then we talk about corrosives, how your hands can be burned and you can breathe in corrosion. Health hazards look like this. And then irritants, skin sensitizers. Acute toxicity. And then finally we wrap up with environmental. So, going forward, I want you to name these one by one as they appear. I'll give you a second before each of the names pop up. What does this one represent? Oxidizer. How about this one? Pressurized gases. And this one? Corrosion. What's this one telling us? Acute toxicity. This one's pretty common. Flammable. And I see this next one all the time, health hazards. Now remember we talked about acute toxicity, sensitizer, irritant. Here we have the exploding bomb. Represents explosions. And then finally, environmental hazards. That one is not mandatory, but it's still all over. So the label requirements. Say that we have to have pictograms and are usually multiple pictograms. But there's a lot of other label requirements. The labels must include specific information about this chemical. There must be specific sections. There has to be a product identifier. Up on top, supplier identification. And this precautionary statement is really important. That's probably the first thing you should read. And then you see the pictograms that we just went through, and in each chemical, we'll have a signal word. It's either danger or warning. Danger, of course, is much more severe than warning. And then we have a hazard statement, and then there may be supplemental information. So get familiar with these labels, know how to read them. Again, this is your first line of defense. So now I'd like to talk about how do these toxins affect us? How do different toxins affect us? Because they come in different forms. I like to explain it in simple terms. We have dust, mist, fumes, often confused with others. gases, and vapors. You should become familiar with all these. So how do these toxins affect us? How do they enter into our bodies? Well, they can come in through inhalation. We can breathe them in. They can come in by absorption through the skin, or ingestion. They could be swallowed somehow. And then we finally have injection in with a needle or even a hole in a high-pressure hydraulic hose. Some of these are poisonous. Some are carcinogens. We need to read these labels. So what's happening in your body? Well, the toxins go in and usually we get rid of it, but not all the time. In the human body, we got to know a little bit what's happening. These chemicals can attack critical organs. When will I know? Well, you've got to read the labels and you've got to read the safety data sheets. Some of these chemicals have an immediate effect. They call that acute, and some have chronic effect where it takes longer for them to take effect. Some will knock you over real quick, and others you won't know for years going in. Many carcinogens and lung problems are caused by this. So remember those pictograms. They're going to appear on these labels. Read the labels. OSHA requires label on everything. Make sure that you take a look at it because you have a right to know what you're going to be exposed to. There are different kinds of groups of hazards: physical, health hazards, and environmental hazards. Know which they represent with you. Look at safety data sheets if you want to do a deeper dive. Sometimes safety data sheets will give you very useful information. Sometimes you may not understand it all, but still take a look at it. They're going to tell you about the chemicals. What kind of first aid measures? You need to know a little bit about how to read that safety data sheet. All safety data sheets have 16 sections. Take a little time and read them. You're going to get some good information out of here. Look to see if in fact they cause cancer. Determine if they're harmful to specific organs. Understand what protective measures that you need to make. Understand how to handle them, how to properly store these chemicals. And then what kind of exposure controls do you need to put in place? So if there's an awful lot of information, these SDSs are all available to you in your workplace. That's what the law says. Now, if you don't understand the information on some of these SDSs, ask your supervisor. If they don't have the answer, they certainly should know where to get it, but you need to understand what you're exposed to. So putting it all together, you read the label, and if you understand it, great. If you don't, then you can jump into these SDSs. So between the labels and the SDSs, you're going to be able to get all the information you need to work safely with some of these hazardous chemicals. Take that deeper dive when you need to and look at the SDSs. So remember now, you need to know about the right to know about the labeling. You need to know about safety data sheets, safe handling, the hazard types, and your training's not complete until you talk to your supervisor. So that's it for today. Be safe.